Hello there, curious minds, and welcome to an extraordinary journey into the unknown. Before we plunge into the heart-pounding saga you're about to hear, I have a small request. Please take a moment to comment where you're tuning in from around the world, and let me know what time it is as you settle down with this story. Time zones fascinate me. I love seeing how a single tale can connect people scattered across countless latitudes and longitudes. Also, if you find yourself enthralled by late-night mysteries, conspiracies, and the sorts of tales that make you question what we truly know about our world, then I invite you to subscribe to Sleep Theories. We delve into the shadowy corners of knowledge, lost histories, unexplained events, and glimpses into conspiracies that just might hold a kernel of truth. It's a space designed to lull you into a contemplative hush while simultaneously sparking your imagination. After all, sometimes drifting off to dreamland is best done to a story that leaves a hint of awe lingering in the air. Tonight's narrative is titled Route 51, The Truck Driver Who Knew Too Much. It's a conspiracy thriller wrapped around a long-haul trucker by the name of Jake Mercer, a man whose routine life on America's highways unexpectedly veers into the deepest state secrets. Picture those silent desert nights along Route 375, colloquially called the extraterrestrial highway. The distant glow of stars above and the faint hum of a secret government base rumored to hold unthinkable mysteries. That's the backdrop of Jake's last job, a contract that lured him with the promise of quick cash, but which turned out to be more than he ever bargained for. You'll meet a cast of characters who either propel him forward or stand in his way. Maggie Ruiz, the dependable voice on the other end of the CB radio. Dr. Eli Voss, an embattled scientist with too many regrets. Agent Nathan Cole, whose entire purpose is to fix problems like a trucker discovering secrets meant for no one's eyes. And of course, the men in black, those stoic enforcers who appear whenever the line between truth and rumor grows dangerously thin. Each part of this story unfolds with mounting tension. From a simple haul job to an eerie cargo to a break in that reveals evidence of extraterrestrial contact to a final desperate scramble for survival. Sometimes in life, the scariest leaps of faith happen when you realize the world is not as you thought it was, and that those in power will go to any lengths to keep it that way. So find a comfortable spot and let your mind wander into the desert. Envision the black ops trucks prowling nighttime highways, the hush of a top-secret hangar, the hum of hidden technology that defies earthly logic. And remember as you listen, if the truth were truly out there, how far would powerful forces go to bury it or bury those who discover it? Now with the stage set, let us commence our journey alongside Jake Mercer, a regular, unassuming truck driver thrown headlong into a world of dark conspiracies and cosmic secrets. Buckle in, keep your headlights on, and prepare to traverse the lonely roads that lead straight into Area 51. Jake Mercer often said he'd seen it all during his years on the road. From giant dust storms in Arizona to sketchy rest stops on the outskirts of big cities. He had once encountered a bull moose outside Boise that nearly totaled his rig. Another time, a hitchhiker claimed to be a time traveler from the year 300. Nothing shocked him anymore until the day he was handed a government contract that came with an absurdly high paycheck and an equally absurd set of restrictions. It started on a scorching Wednesday afternoon in Albuquerque. Jake, nursing a cold energy drink, had just finished hauling medical supplies across state lines. While reviewing his next assignment, he noticed it was labeled High Priority Federal Clearance Required. His usual dispatcher, a gruff man named Martin, shrugged helplessly. I don't know, Jake. They just said you're the driver for this. Pays triple, though. Don't ask me anymore. The instructions were bizarre. Pick up a sealed freight container at a secure depot. No questions asked. Do not open or inspect the cargo under any circumstance. Follow the GPS coordinates to a location in the Nevada desert. Deliver by midnight, no exceptions. Speak to nobody about the nature of your load. Jake raised an eyebrow but accepted. Triple pay was triple pay, and there had been times he could barely cover the rig's maintenance. This job might set him up for months. Besides, he'd grown tired of daily monotony. A secret government contract carried a certain forbidden allure. He arrived at the secure depot by late afternoon. Towering barbed wire fences enclosed the yard, guarded by men in unmarked uniforms. A tall officer with the ice-cold eyes verified Jake's ID for an uncomfortably long time. Then, with a curt nod, he directed Jake to back his truck into a loading bay. 4 workers carefully rolled out a large metal container about 20 ft long, its edges sealed with rivets. It had no markings except a small stenciled code R51 classified. Jake watched them bolt the container to the truck's chassis. The officer approached again, thrusting a thick envelope into Jake's hands. Your instructions, stick to them. No detours, no curiosity. Understood. Jake nodded. He could practically feel the tension in the air as though crossing some invisible threshold from routine life into the hush of clandestine operations. He hopped into his cab, fired up the engine, and eased away. Part of him expected to see black SUVs trailing him, but the roads around the depot were deserted. The miles slipped by in a haze of desert heat. With each passing hour, the sun dipped lower, painting the horizon a fierce orange, then a soft lavender. By dusk, Jake was coasting along an empty stretch of Nevada highway, the sign reading 75M to Groom Lake. He knew that name. It was rumored to be near Area 51, the site of countless alien conspiracies. He snorted to himself. Aliens, right, just bored people telling wild stories. Still, the distinct hush out here made him uneasy. Around 8:00 p.m., his radio crackled to life. Jake, you out there? The voice belonged to Maggie Ruiz, one of the nighttime dispatch operators he'd befriended over the years. She was a talkative soul who often kept him company on lonely drives. Heard you took some big job, Jake hesitated. The instructions had been explicit, speak to nobody. But Maggie wasn't exactly nobody. She was a friend. Yeah, Mags. Some weird government contract pays well, though. Government, huh? They got you on hush-hush duty. You could say that, Jake admitted. Hey, can't chat much, the instructions. Gotcha, Maggie said, sounding intrigued. Well, I'll be on the line if you need me. Don't let them spooks get you. She ended the call with a laugh that only half concealed her curiosity. Silence returned, broken only by the tires on asphalt. Jake's mind drifted. Why all the secrecy? The new weapons system, high-tech gear, it's not your place to ask, he reminded himself. Then from behind the truck, a faint sound reached his ears. A hollow clang like metal tapping on metal. He tensed. The cargo container was sealed. No reason it should make noise. Could something inside be shifting? He decided to ignore it. For half an hour, the clang repeated every few minutes. Then it stopped. Jake's heart, however, continued to pound. He told himself it was just the rig's suspension or cargo settling. But a nagging thought persisted. What if something's alive in there? Night fell fully, and the desert around him turned into an expanse of blackness. With less than 60 mi to go, Jake planned to skip rest stops entirely. The job instructions demanded no stops, fine by him, but the truck's fuel gauge told a different story. He'd miscalculated. He needed fuel or risked stalling short of the drop-off point. That spelled trouble on all fronts. Checking his map, he spotted a lone truck stop about 10 mi ahead. He considered the risk, but thirst and necessity overrode caution. He pulled in around 9:30 p.m. The place was half-lit by flickering neon, a relic of the golden age of roadside diners. Only a couple of vehicles sat in the lot, an old station wagon and a battered pickup. Perfect. Less chance of prying eyes. Jake filled his tank, then stepped inside to pay. An elderly cashier nodded at him, barely curious. But just as Jake reached for his wallet, he felt something slip into his back pocket like a paper note. He whirled, scanning the aisles. He saw no one suspicious, only the old cashier slowly bagging items. Outside in the dim lot, Jake fished out the note. Scrolled in shaky handwriting were the words, "You're delivering more than just cargo. Watch your back." That was it. No signature, no explanation. Adrenaline surged in Jake's veins. Someone at this dusty rest stop recognized him, knew his job, and decided to warn him. He stuffed the note into his pocket, hurried back to his truck, and slammed the door shut. The container sat inert, moonlight reflecting off its metallic surface. "Watch my back," he muttered. "Oops, going on." He stared at the container. The clang from earlier echoed in his memory. Curiosity gnawed at him. The contract said not to open the cargo, but the contract also never mentioned risking his life for ignorance. Gritting his teeth, Jake hopped down, grabbed a crowbar from the side compartment, and approached the sealed panel. If the old soldier at the checkpoint found out, Jake would lose his entire paycheck, maybe face legal trouble. But sometimes you have to see for yourself what you're hauling. He slid the crowbar under a seam, testing if the rivets could be pried loose. The metal groaned, then relented. Slowly, Jake lifted the edge, heart thudding with each inch. The interior was dark, but a faint chemical smell wafted out, a sterile tang reminiscent of hospitals. Then in the shadows, he saw something that made his blood run cold, a heavy steel pod with a thick glass window. It was empty. Straps hung limp as if they'd once held something in place. Jake felt the nape of his neck prickle. Something had been in that pod, but it wasn't there now. And that meant only one thing. It was loose. Possibly inside the container, possibly outside. A flurry of possibilities seized him. He had to close it and drive, pretend ignorance, or he could investigate. But with each second, his safe timeline shrank. The clock was ticking toward midnight. The cargo door he'd pried open wouldn't fully reveal without leaving evidence of tampering. Just then, a metallic clang echoed again from behind him. Jake spun around, crowbar at the ready, but saw nothing except dancing shadows. Fear twisted his gut. He needed to get out of here ASAP, but how do you run from something unknown? He forced the container door shut as best he could, hopped into the cab, and revved the engine. He had about 50 mi left to the coordinate. An unknown, something presumably in tow or on the loose. The note's warning replayed in his head. Danger lurked in the darkness, but he had a job to finish, however insane it was becoming. So Jake pressed the pedal, merging back onto the lonely highway. The thought of Area 51 no longer seemed so silly, because in that instant he knew one truth. This was no ordinary cargo, and he was no longer a simple truck driver. He was a man knee-deep in a conspiracy he couldn't yet fathom. As the highway unfurled beneath his wheels, Jake felt an unfamiliar sense of paranoia creeping in. He kept glancing at his side mirrors, half expecting government vehicles to appear with flashing lights, but the desert remained eerily quiet. He turned on his CB radio, hoping to reach Maggie again, some connection to normalcy. Static hissed, then Maggie's voice cut through. "Jake, that you? I was wondering if you'd gone silent for good." "Maggie," he said, his own voice shaky. "Listen, something's off. This cargo, whatever's inside it, it might have, I don't know. It's just not right." He hesitated to reveal everything. Scanning the empty road ahead, I opened it, found a locked pod. Empty, like it was meant to hold something alive. Line crackled with tension. Alive, Jake. That's not good. Did you see anything else? No, just straps. Then I heard noises like metal scraping something's loose mags. Could be an animal, or he couldn't bring himself to say the word alien, but the possibility danced in his thoughts. She inhaled sharply. This is big. You sure you want to keep going? Jake's foot pressed on the accelerator. I've come too far. I got to finish the drop. Maybe once I'm at the base, they'll handle whatever it is. Then I'm done. Paid out, okay, but keep me updated. I'll see if I can dig up anything on that container code you mentioned. R51 might be referencing Area 51, or it could be something else. Just be careful. He ended the call feeling slightly better, knowing someone had his back. The desert night pulled him deeper in. A battered sign reading restricted access beyond this point loomed up, complete with additional warnings about lethal force. His GPS insisted he was on course. The drop-off coordinate flickered on the screen, still about 30 mi away. A swirling dust devil crossed the highway, forcing Jake to slow. For a moment he thought he spotted headlights behind him, but when he looked again, they were another flicker of paranoia. Focus on driving. At the next bend, the road became narrower, lined with chain-link fences sporting no trespassing placards. This was definitely a different world, someplace built to discourage visitors. At last, around 11:20 p.m., the GPS beeped. You have arrived at your destination. He found himself at a tall automated gate. A small speaker next to it crackled. State your clearance code, a monotone voice demanded. Jake fumbled through the envelope for a badge with a printed code. He read it into the speaker. The gate groaned open. No turning back now. Beyond the gate, wide asphalt fields stretched out, dotted with hangars and low buildings. Dim security lights revealed soldiers patrolling. Jake was directed by glowing cones to an underground entrance reminiscent of a bunker. The entire operation exuded secrecy, and the air felt thick with tension. A pair of uniformed men flagged him down. One motioned him into a cavernous elevator platform large enough for the truck. As it descended, the walls became concrete. Jake's heart hammered. He was going underground, presumably beneath the base's surface. The platform settled in a subterranean loading area, bright fluorescent lights washing everything in an antiseptic glow. Armed guards approached. One barked, "Power down the truck. Step out with your hands visible." Jake complied, squinting under the stark lights. Another guard used a scanning device over the container's locks. Jake tensed. Would they notice I pried it open? A beep. The guard frowned. The container's seal is compromised. Sir, did you tamper with this? Jake's breath caught. He forced an even tone. Number must have come loose on the road. The guard stared daggers at him, unconvinced. Before the interrogation could deepen, a tall figure in a crisp suit appeared, a man exuding authority. He wore no name tag, but his demeanor demanded respect. Take the container, he told the guards. I'll handle the driver. He turned to Jake, his gaze cold. I'm Agent Nathan Cole. Follow me now. Jake had no choice. Agent Cole led him through a set of steel doors into a windowless corridor that seemed to stretch forever, each side bearing identical sealed rooms. They reached a small antechamber where Cole fixed him with a glare. You're not to speak of anything you see here. I assume you read your contract. Jake swallowed, trying to maintain composure. Yes, good, because if you break your silence, we'll know. We always know. Cole paused as if relishing the intimidation. You'll wait here until we confirm the cargo. Then you'll be escorted off the premises. Jake gave a stiff nod. The door slammed shut, leaving him in a Spartan waiting area with 2 chairs and a silent guard. Minutes bled into an hour. Jake's mind whirred, replaying the ominous note, the empty pod, the possibility that some creature roamed free. He couldn't just leave, he had to at least see it through. Yet now he was stuck, evidently untrusted. Suddenly, a blaring siren echoed down the corridor. The guard stiffened, pressing a finger to his earpiece. Muffled orders came through. Another beep. A door slid open and a frantic voice barked. "We have a breach. Unidentified subject loose in Sector C. Secure all entry points." Jake's eyes widened. Sector C, is that where they took the container? The guard dashed out, leaving Jake momentarily unguarded. Fear and adrenaline collided. If something truly broke loose, a creature perhaps, this place was about to become a war zone, and Jake had no desire to be trapped in the crossfire. He took a risk, slipping out of the waiting area into the corridor. Sirens kept howling and red emergency lights strobed. He turned a corner, nearly colliding with a cluster of uniformed men sprinting in the opposite direction. They ignored him, focused on the crisis deeper inside the facility. Jake spotted a sign that read, "Warehouse access, authorized personnel only." Heart pounding, he reasoned that was likely where his cargo had been stored. Maybe he could glimpse the truth. Maybe he could find answers and maybe find an exit. Because once the base settled, they'd probably arrest or worse. If I see something incriminating, maybe I can force my release. Stealing his courage, he slipped through the door and descended a short flight of steps. The hallway ended in a large open area that resembled an aircraft hangar, only it was buried underground. Harsh fluorescent lights shone over crates, pods, and containers. And near the center, resting on a heavy-duty dolly, was his container. The side panel still parted from his crowbar attempt. Military personnel crowded around rifles at the ready. A slender, bespectacled man in a lab coat kneeled by the container, rummaging through what appeared to be alien-like apparatus inside. Jake recognized him from a news article he'd read about government scientists Dr. Eli Voss. But the man looked older, haunted, his face drawn in panic. Jake crept closer, ducking behind some crates. He glimpsed inside the container. Strange devices with glowing lines, a cylindrical capsule that must have once held the occupant of the steel pod. Doc Devos fiddled with an electronic console as if trying to lock something down. Another soldier shouted, "We have movement in the vent. Sector C." Chaos reigned. In the swirl of confusion, a shadow flickered across the far wall, tall and spindly, shifting unnaturally quick. Jake's blood chilled. Was that the creature? The guard fired a shot. Shouts erupted. "Hold your fire. We need it alive." Another soldier scrambled to raise a tranquilizer rifle. Then, to Jake's horror, the shadow vanished from the wall and reappeared on the ceiling, impossibly defying gravity. Staccato gunfire erupted, the muzzle flashes lighting up the space in blinding arcs. Something hissed, a weird, unearthly keening. Then silence, broken by a guard's scream. Jake's instinct screamed at him to run, but his body froze. A part of him was transfixed by the bizarre reality unfolding. Something not of this world scuttled across the ceiling, too fast to track. Soldiers cursed and swung rifles upward. In the chaos, Dr. Voss turned, scanning the room, his eyes locked onto Jake, half hidden behind a crate. In that moment, recognition flickered in the scientist's gaze. Maybe he pegged Jake as a civilian who shouldn't be there. But instead of raising an alarm, Voss mouthed something akin to, "Get out." Jake's heart hammered. Did he dare trust this man? The swirling lights, the shouts, the lurking predator overhead. There was no time to weigh options. Don J. Devos beckoned, then pointed toward a door marked "Exit Vehicle Hangar." Jake nodded mutely, realizing this might be his only chance to escape. Then, just as he started to move, another ears-shattering alarm blared. The creature hissed again and the lights flickered. plunging the entire base into partial darkness. Jake felt the temperature in the hangar drop. Or perhaps it was just cold sweat dripping down his back. The overhead fluorescent tubes sputtered, struggling to keep the space lit. In that half-lit gloom, shadows sprawled across the walls like living things. The shape of the creature, so swift and unnatural, kept flickering in his peripheral vision. To Eli, Voss dashed across the concrete floor, nearly tripping over a supply crate. Jake followed, keeping low. Gunshots echoed again, followed by a soldier's panicked shout. Then a monstrous clang of metal on metal like something heavy was battered aside. One more shriek cut through the confusion, then silence. The hush was deafening, charged with primal fear. Voss and Jake reached the side door labeled Exit Vehicle Hangar, but it was locked by an electronic key panel. Cursing under his breath, Voss fumbled for a key card, swiped it, and the panel beeped red. Access denied. Another attempt, same result. Damn it, Voss hissed, his voice quivering. He slapped the panel in frustration. They must have initiated lockdown. I need a higher clearance. He glanced over his shoulder. We'll have to find another way out. Jake's mind reeled. Doc, what the hell is in here? Did something break out of that container? Voss closed his eyes briefly as if in pain. Yes, it's an entity we recovered from a crash site. Part biological, part mechanical, still learning about it, but we call it Xenoform Beta. We had it sedated, locked in stasis, until your container got compromised. He cast Jake a conflicted look, half guilt, half blame. Now it's loose. Jake's stomach clenched. This is insane. Let's just get out. If that thing's dangerous, the soldiers can handle it, right? The bitter laugh escaped the scientist. You think a few bullets can handle something not made by human hands? We've barely scratched the surface of its capabilities. That's why they keep it here in these underground labs. They have been trying to replicate or harness its technology, but God knows if they truly can. A flash of movement tore their attention back to the hangar's center. The overhead lights finally died, plunging the entire chamber into strobing red emergency lighting. In that throbbing glow, Jake glimpsed a twisted silhouette perched on top of a giant crate. The creature's form defied easy description. Elongated limbs, an insectal curvature to its back, and an almost metallic sheen under the red glare. Its eyes, or what resembled them, glowed faintly, scanning the room. Jake's breath caught, fear hammered in his chest. Then, in a heartbeat, the creature leapt upward, disappearing into the rafters. Voss grabbed Jake's sleeve. We need to move. There's a side corridor that might lead us to the upper levels, then an exit. Hurry. They skirted the edge of the hangar, slipping past toppled crates and the scattered remains of advanced lab gear. Jake's mind flitted between horror at what he'd seen and the sheer adrenaline of survival. He recalled the hush-hush talk about Area 51, the rumors of alien remains, crashed UFOs, secret experiments. He'd always dismissed them until now. The reality overshadowed any rumor. A corridor branched off from the main hangar, lined with thick steel doors at intervals. Flickering lights revealed blood stains on the floor. Voss swallowed hard, adjusting his lab coat. We had staff stationed down here if the entity attacked them. He didn't finish the sentence. Jake decided it was best not to look too closely. Just then, overhead speakers crackled and a voice boomed. Facility-wide alert. Intruder protocol engaged. All unauthorized personnel must surrender immediately. We have lethal authority. Jake recognized the voice of Agent Nathan Cole, that cold official who'd greeted him earlier. Secure or eliminate the asset at all costs. Repeat, eliminate if necessary. Jake locked eyes with Voss. Intruder protocol. That's me. They'll kill us both if they catch us. Voss nodded grimly. Yes, the powers that be want no witnesses. They'll blame any casualties on the creature. Then bury the truth. You'll vanish, I'll vanish. Everyone will vanish. Jake felt a wave of anger surge. He was just a truck driver drawn into this cosmic nightmare, but the injustice of it struck him. We can't let them bury this. People have a right to know. The word surprised even him. A day ago, he'd have laughed at the concept of alien secrets. Now, every fiber of him believed the public deserved the truth. The scientists studied him, something shifting in his eyes. You're serious. You'd risk your life to expose them. Jake hesitated, but the memory of that empty pod, that monstrous silhouette overhead, the hush-hush contract, it all churned inside him. I can't just walk away after seeing this. They'll kill me anyway. Might as well try to do something. Voss exhaled a mixture of relief and desperation. Then we need evidence, proof. There's a secure server in Lab 7. If we can copy data from the research logs, photos, video, we can blow the lid off. But it's deeper in the facility. And we still have that alien creature roaming free. Jake's pulse pounded. Let's do it. Then find a way out. They continued down the corridor, passing locked doors. Voss used his keycard on door after door, some opening to reveal labs in disarray, others refusing entry. They found a small storage room with an overhead vent. A battered soldier lay unconscious near the door, apparently knocked out by the creature. Voss knelt, checked the man's pulse, then grabbed his keycard. He's alive. Let's hope he stays that way. They stepped over him, pushing on. One corridor led to a sign reading, Lab 6, Biological Analysis. Another pointed to Lab 7, Xenoform Studies. Voss gestured to Lab 7. That's our target. They eased forward. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Inside, monitors flickered, showing cryptic readouts of gene sequences, strange symbols, and footage of a containment room. One screen displayed images of the alien craft's wreckage. Another showed the crashed remains with the label Project Lazarus. Jake's chest tightened. He was stepping deeper into a world no civilian was ever meant to see. Voss rushed to a console. Keep watch. I'll retrieve the files. Jake scanned the hallway behind them, senses on high alert. The overhead siren still wailed, and occasionally they heard the distant staccato of gunfire. The base was locked in a terrifying cat-and-mouse standoff. Who was the cat, the creature, or the men with guns? At the console, Voss inserted a portable drive. Data lines scrolled across the screen. I've got logs, video of the entity and stasis, autopsy reports from earlier specimens. This is enough to rock the entire world if we get it out. Jake turned, fixating on the largest monitor. It showed security footage from inside the container corridor. Black and white graininess, a timestamp flickering in the corner. He recognized his own truck parked there, the container being moved, then the feed jumped to a chaotic moment. Engineers scattering as the alien burst from the pod. Jesus, Jake muttered. No one's going to believe we got all this proof that it's real. Voss tapped frantically. The progress bar crawled to 90%, then 100%. Done. He yanked the drive. Now a harsh clang behind them. The door to Lab 7 slammed shut and a figure stepped inside. Not the alien, but an unformed man with a stoic face, Agent Nathan Cole. His sidearm was raised. That's enough, Doctor. And you, he hissed at Jake, have caused quite a mess. Jake's gut clenched. We're just shut it. Cole's eyes burned with quiet rage. Hand over the drive and face the wall. The only reason you two aren't dead is because I want to know how far this breach goes. He gestured with the gun. Now Jake glanced at Voss. The scientist gave a tiny nod. Reluctantly, he extended the flash drive toward Cole, but as Cole reached for it, a thunderous crash reverberated overhead. The lights flickered off. Darkness swallowed the room. Then a single red emergency lamp kicked in, bathing everything in a sinister glow. A monstrous screech resonated from the corridor. Xenoform Beta was near. Cole spun momentarily distracted. Voss seized the chance, fumbling for a button on the console that read, "Override Lab 7 door." The door slid open. "Run," Voss yelled. Jake bolted, ignoring Cole's furious shout. Shots rang out. Sparks ricocheted from a metal panel. But in the confusion, Jake and Voss tumbled into the hallway, the precious flash drive still in the scientist's grip. They slammed the door behind them, locking Cole inside. Another screech echoed down the corridor, closer this time. Jake realized they were trapped between an armed agent and a rampaging alien, but at least they had the data. The question was, could they reach the surface and the outside world before the entire base sealed their fate? Jake's adrenaline soared. The corridor was dimly lit by flickering red emergency panels, casting dancing shadows on the concrete walls. Dr. Voss clutched the flash drive tightly, face pale but resolute. They could still hear Agent Cole pounding on the locked lab door behind them, shouting commands into a radio. More gunshots thundered somewhere in the distance. A scraping sound from the ceiling alerted Jake. He and Voss froze. Something large moved through the ventilation shafts overhead, slithering or crawling with unnatural speed. Then silence. Jake's heart hammered against his rib cage. The creature is close, so close. Voss motioned him forward. If we can reach the main elevator, we might get to the surface. Unless they've locked it down, they crept forward, the corridor branching in multiple directions. Each intersection was marked with cryptic signs. Sector E testing labs, Sector F holding cells armory data center. Barks parked near a half-destroyed control panel. The air smelled of burning wires. They passed a lifeless soldier slumped against the wall. Jake tried not to stare at the man's blank eyes. This base had become a battlefield or maybe a slaughterhouse. They turned a corner and spotted the main elevator at the far end. A steel gate sealed it off. Another keycard panel blinked red. "We can try," Voss whispered. He ran up and swiped his card. Nothing. He typed a code, still no response. The screen displayed lockdown protocol engaged. Jake cursed under his breath. "What now? A staircase?" Voss nodded. "There's an emergency stairwell near the east side, but it's a long way up, and if they've sealed the hatches, we might be trapped anyway." Better than waiting around. Jake gestured for him to lead. They hustled deeper into the labyrinth. Alarms kept screeching overhead. Messages about containment breach mixing with intruder protocol. The base's disorientation left Jake feeling like a rat in a high-tech maze. A loud clang resounded from behind them like metal being torn apart. Then came a roar of fear. The soldier's voice cut short. Jake's throat constricted. The creature was picking them off one by one. They had to keep moving. They found the stairwell door, heavy reinforced steel. Voss tried his card. The lock clicked and they pulled it open. Inside, the shaft spiraled up. Dim emergency lights illuminated each landing. Voss peered upward. "We're at least 8 levels below ground. Let's hope we can get out on the top level." They started climbing. The sounds of chaos below gradually faded, replaced by their ragged breaths echoing in the concrete chamber. After 2 flights, Jake's calves burned, but adrenaline pushed him on. Voss lagged slightly, clutching the railing. "I'm not exactly in shape for this," he muttered with a grim humor. Jake offered a hand, helping him keep pace. By the 4th level up, a new noise drifted from above. Heavy footsteps or maybe boots. They exchanged a worried glance. Could it be more soldiers or the men in black? They pressed themselves against the wall, listening. The footsteps paused, then resumed, heading downward. Jake's instincts flared. A confrontation was likely. He looked around for an alternate route, but the stairwell was a single column, nowhere to hide. Within moments, two armed men in black tactical gear rounded the landing above, rifles aimed. They froze upon spotting Jake and Voss. "Stop, hands up," one barked. The other triggered a radio. "We have them in the stairwell, Sector G Level 3. Request backup." Jake's mind raced. If they complied, they'd be detained or killed. The data would be lost. We have to fight or flee. He looked at the door on the next landing, noticing a sign that read maintenance tunnel. If they could just reach it, but the men advanced, rifles unwavering. Down on the ground now. Voss clutched the flash drive like a lifeline. Jake raised his hand slowly, scanning for an opening. Then an unexpected roar shook the stairwell from far below. A monstrous wail so loud it vibrated the metal railings. The men in black turned reflexively, faces betraying fear. Jake seized the moment. He lunged forward, slamming one guard's rifle sideways. A shot rang out, ricocheting off the wall. The second guard spun, but Voss, fueled by desperation, tackled him. The guard stumbled, lost his footing, and pitched down a half-flight of stairs with a sickening thud. Jake wrested the rifle from the first guard, who reeled from the blow. Another savage roar echoed. The guard's eyes widened with terror. He's heard that sound before, Jake realized. Without hesitation, the guard wrenched free, scrambled up the stairs, and fled. Clearly dealing with an alien nightmare outranked capturing them. Voss panted, adrenaline surging. That was close. He retrieved the rifle from the second guard's limp form, then eyed Jake. "We can't do that again. Let's get to that maintenance tunnel." They ascended the last steps, prying open the door labeled maintenance tunnel. A narrow corridor greeted them, pipes running along the ceiling. Dim overhead bulbs flickered. The air smelled of chemical coolant. This wasn't a typical hallway for staff, more like a service route for engineers. If they were lucky, it might lead to a less guarded exit. They threaded through tight passages. Machinery hummed behind grated walls. Occasional signage read ventilation, power grid, or hazardous material storage. The base's sheer scale astounded Jake. He was used to big warehouse complexes, but this was on another level entirely, like a hidden city beneath the desert. Voss led them around a bend, consulting a small mental map he presumably knew from his years working here. This path should intersect an older cargo elevator that services above-ground hangars. Less monitored. Maybe we can bypass the lockdown. They soon reached a rusted steel door labeled Auxiliary Cargo Lift. Voss fiddled with the control panel. "Seems offline. Let me see if I can power it." He popped open a fuse box, revealing a mess of wires. While he worked, Jake kept an ear out for pursuit. The base's alarms had quieted, replaced by sporadic gunfire or distant screams. An uneasy hush lay over the corridors. Finally, the lights on the lift control glowed. "I think it's operational," Voss said with relief. They pulled the heavy door aside, revealing a cargo elevator platform big enough for a small truck. A single overhead bulb cast feeble light inside. Voss stepped on, tapped to control. "It might take us near the surface at least." "Let's hope the power supply holds." The lift groaned to life, lurching upward at a crawl. Each second felt interminable. Jake exhaled, letting tension slip momentarily. They had come so far, risked so much. If they could just break free. Halfway up, the entire platform shuddered. The overhead bulb flickered wildly. Voss paled, powers dropping. Another violent jolt. The lift screeched to a halt, suspended in darkness, then a mechanical whine, and it resumed, but painfully slow. "Stay calm," Voss urged. Jake stared at the grated walls sliding by. "Doc, if we get out, how do we expose all this? The government will come after us." Voss swallowed. We'll need to broadcast the data widely, upload it to multiple news outlets, leak it online, something unstoppable. Even Black Ops can't erase everything once it's out, but we must move fast. The lift ground to a stop at what looked like a storeroom. A faint overhead sign read, "Surface access authorized only." The door's lock glowed red. Voss tried his card. No luck, he exhaled, frustration seeping in. Security clearance. We need a high-level code, possibly from someone like Agent Cole. Jake cursed. They were stuck again. They peered through the grated door at the corridor beyond. It was dim, no immediate sign of guards. Jake gave the door a shove. Solid. He read the sign. Biocontainment. Please decontaminate. Another reminder they were dealing with top-secret alien research. Just then, a banging noise echoed from below the elevator shaft. Jake froze. Could the creature be climbing? They saw nothing but the clang repeated, rising. Voss's eyes widened. It might sense us. We have to go now. Desperation blossomed. Jake scanned the storeroom. Near the door, a small control panel with a numeric keypad flickered. If only they had a code. Then Voss had a frantic idea. Check that dead guard's key card. It might have higher clearance than mine, but they'd left the guard behind. They had no card. A metallic screech from the elevator shaft triggered panic. Voss rummaged in his pockets. I have partial override. Cole might not be enough, but let's try. He typed a sequence. The panel beeped, then displayed invalid. Another attempt. Invalid. The banging grew louder, closer. Jake braced himself, rifle in hand. Finally, on Voss's third try, the panel beeped green. The door hissed. They burst into the corridor, slamming it behind them. A heavy mechanical lock engaged. For now, they had a barrier between them and the horrors below. They found themselves in a wide hallway leading to a large blast door. Painted above it was surface hangar access. Jake's heart soared. They might just make it, but the corridor wasn't empty. At the far end stood several men, the men in black, tall, expressionless, each clad in black suits, incongruous in a facility like this. They stared at Jake and Voss with cold detachment, no weapons drawn, yet the threat they exuded was tangible. One man stepped forward, face devoid of emotion. "You do not belong here. Hand over the now." Another man reached inside his jacket, presumably for a sidearm. Jake aimed the rifle, though his gives jangled. "Stay back, we just want out." The lead man's lips twitched in what might have been a faint smile. "You've seen too much. People like you vanish all the time. Step away from the exit." Voss inhaled sharply. "No, not this time." He nudged Jake. "Look, there's a side door to the hangar. If we can slip past them," but the men in black advanced in a synchronized motion. Jake realized any negotiation was futile. They intended to bury them here. Another standoff. The corridor lights hummed, tension crackling. Then footsteps thundered behind the men in black. Uniformed soldiers sprinting toward them with rifles. Over a loudspeaker, Agent Cole's voice boomed. "Seize them. Secure that data." Jake's grip tightened. They were pinned between the men in black and Cole's forces. No path out. So much for the surface hangar access. Then a thunderous crash shook the entire corridor. The lights flickered. The creature's eerie screech erupted somewhere close, reverberating in the vents. The men in black turned, momentarily distracted. Jake seized the chance. But to go where? In the flickering corridor, tension hung like a storm cloud ready to erupt. Jake and Dr. Voss stood near the blast door to the surface, confronted by the emotionless men in black on one side and heavily armed soldiers rushing in from the other. Overhead, the alien's shriek vibrated the air, chilling blood and bone alike. A soldier's voice barked, "Open fire." Shots rang out, but not at Jake, rather at the men in black. Agent Cole appeared behind the line of soldiers, face twisted in rage. "Stop them all," he ordered. "None leave this facility." The men in black responded with unnatural speed, dodging bullets with fluid motions. Two of them drew sidearms, returning precise, methodical fire. Jake dove behind a large crate, pulling Voss down with him. Splinters rained as bullets shredded the crate's edges, a swirl of confusion. Soldiers for his men in black, each brandishing lethal force. In that chaos, neither side was particularly aiming at Jake or Voss, but it was only a matter of time before crossfire caught them. The corridors overhead lights sparked, some failing entirely, plunging stretches into darkness. Jake's eyes darted around for an escape route. The blast door to the surface was sealed. Another key panel glowed ominously, but the fighting might give them an opening, if they could slip past the crossfire. Then came a thunderous crash from above. The ceiling vent tore open and the creature dropped into the fray. His elongated limbs slammed onto the floor, bristling with otherworldly menace. Men on both sides gasped or shouted curses. In an instant, the alien lunged at a soldier, knocking him aside with terrifying strength. Another soldier fired a burst, but the creature leapt onto the wall, scurrying horizontally before vaulting toward a second victim. Jake's heart pounded, every sense screaming to run. The strobe of muzzle flashes illuminated the creature's shiny cartoons, revealing eerie segments of biotech. It let out a piercing shriek that rattled the corridor. The men in black pivoted calmly, firing specialized tranquilizer rounds. Jake recognized the dull hiss of compressed gas, but the alien jerked away with inhuman agility, rendering their aim useless. Dr. Voss tugged Jake's sleeve, pointing to the blaster panel. "We can try an override." Bullets and shrieks overshadowed all else. Jake nodded quickly, crawling on hands and knees to the door's side. Voss typed rapidly on the keypad, face taut with concentration. "I prepared a universal code for emergencies, but it might take a minute." A glance back. The fight raged. Soldiers hollered, "Fall back." The men in black advanced systematically. The alien pinned one soldier to the floor, tail lashing, then sprang away. In the confusion, Agent Cole spotted Jake. Their eyes locked, Cole's expression contorted with hatred. He raised his sidearm, intending to shoot, but the alien abruptly crashed between them, scattering debris. Cole stumbled back, disappearing behind swirling dust. The keypad beeped. Voss whispered in triumph. The heavy door hissed, gears turning, light spilled in. Pale moonlight. They could see the desert sky beyond. Finally an exit. "Go, Jake," Voss urged. They scrambled through the opening and found themselves in an open-air hangar. The night was clear, star-laden. The entire base lay behind them, a subterranean fortress. A pair of black helicopters idled near the perimeter, rotors spinning. On the far side of the hangar stood Jake's original rig, or so it appeared at a glance, though the trailer was missing, likely whisked away for processing. Uniformed ground crew skirched about, some brandishing weapons. Alarms blared outside as well, bites roving across the tarmac. If they tried to simply walk out, they'd be shot. Jake scanned for a path. A row of government SUVs sat parked near a chain-link fence. If they could hotwire one behind them, the corridor echoed with more screams. The alien might tear that entire place apart or be subdued. Jake had no illusions about the government's willingness to use extreme measures. A fiery explosion rumbled from below, dust puffing around the door's edges. Red lights flickered on the surface as well, signifying a full base emergency. Dr. Voss panted, adrenaline fueling him. "We must get to a vehicle and run. We can send the data out once we're safe. Don't let them corner us." Jake spied a break in the fence to the north near a ridge. Maybe if they reached that vantage, they could vanish into the desert. He grabbed Voss's shoulder. "Come on." They sprinted across the open ground. A startled crewman shouted, raising a sidearm. Jake fired a warning shot in the air from the rifle he'd kept. The crewman ducked, letting them pass. They nearly reached the SUVs when headlights flared. Two black Jeeps roared into the hangar from the opposite side, tires squealing. Figures in black suits hopped out. Reinforcements. One fired at them, bullets pinging on the tarmac. Jake and Voss dove behind an SUV. Voss fumbled for the keys in the ignition. Locked, no key. We'll have to hot wire it. Jake had experience with older trucks, not modern secure systems, but he wrenched open the dash panel, yanking wires. Meanwhile, Voss returned fire with the stolen rifle. Shouts rang out. Jake's fingers trembled as he tried bypassing the ignition. A bullet shattered the passenger window, glass raining. Voss gasped, clutching his arm. I'm hit, just a graze. Finally, a spark. The SUV's engine coughed, then roared. Jake slid into the driver's seat, yanking Voss inside. With a screech, they peeled away, bullets pursuing them. The chain-link fence ahead was locked, but Jake fled it. The SUV crashed through with a shriek of twisted metal, lurching onto a desert road. Dust engulfed them, freed from the base, but not out of danger. Under the moonlight sky, they sped across an unpaved route, the tires bouncing violently. Voss clutched his wounded arm. Keep driving. We have to get as far as possible from their perimeter. They'll have drones, helicopters. Jake glanced at the overhead starlight. Then we need to lose ourselves in the terrain. He recalled a canyon area about 5 mi east where the ridges might conceal them. The SUV's high beams carved a path through the dark. The night felt endless. The desert an expanse of shadows. Maggie's voice flashed in Jake's mind. I'll be on the line if you need me. They had no stable radio here, but the SUV's console might have a secure channel. He fumbled with the radio dial's static, then an open channel. Jake, you there? I heard rumors top secret base activity near Groom Lake. Jake, relief flooded him. Maggie, I'm out, but they're chasing me. Listen, I have proof, real proof. We have an alien life form down there. They tried to kill me. They won't stop. Maggie's voice trembled. Jake. Oh my God, send me the files now. I'll try to upload them. Maybe we can blow it wide open. Voss, hunched in the passenger seat, managed to pass the flash drive over. Jake rummaged for a data port on the radio console. The SUV being government issue had a specialized system. He jammed the drive in, praying it connected. We're uploading, he told Maggie. Get ready. But as soon as the transfer began, a worrying hum overhead signaled an approaching helicopter. The SUV's warning systems beeped. Tracking signal detected. A robotic voice announced. They had no illusions about outrunning a helicopter. The digital progress bar in the console advanced painfully slow, 10%, 20%. A bright spotlight hit them from above. The helicopter swooped in, buffeting them with wind. Gunfire spat from its side, peppering the ground. Jake swerved, nearly flipping the SUV. The progress bar hit 50%. Another burst of bullets forced him to brake behind a rocky outcrop, losing line of sight with the chopper. Over the radio, Maggie's voice crackled. Jake, the feed cut out. Are you there? I only got partial data. Hurry, the console displayed. Signal lost. Jake's fists clenched. They needed a stable line. Voss gasped from blood loss, eyes drooping. We can't hold them off. Maybe we should hide the drive. Let the next person find it. Jake refused to accept defeat. We're so close. He looked around, noticing a side canyon. If they could lure the chopper away or jam its sensors, they might resume uploading. But even if they do, would the government manage to shut it down? Suddenly, a second helicopter roared over the ridge. The spotlight pinned them again. The SUV's engine coughed under the strain of the rough terrain. The dash flickered. This is it, Jake realized. They're pinned, no clear escape. He turned to Voss. "Doc, you did your best. Let me try one last Hail Mary." He grabbed the mic. "Maggie, if you can hear me, get the word out. Even partial data might be enough. Don't let them bury this." The only reply was static. The swirling rotors whipped up a sandstorm around them. A mechanical voice from overhead blared on a loudspeaker. "Jake Mercer, surrender now, I'm Mom." Agent Cole's tone, no doubt. The first helicopter descended, kicking up a hurricane of dust. Jake shielded his eyes. "Voss, hang in there." Men in black tactical gear leapt from the copter, guns drawn. He tried to reverse the SUV, but the engine sputtered. A bullet shattered the windshield, grazing his shoulder. He cried out, slumping. Another bullet took out the front tire. The SUV lurched to a stop, doors flung open, men yanking them out. The next moments were chaos, Voss wailing in pain. The flash drive knocked from his grip. It tried to fight, but a rifle butt slammed into his temple. Stars exploded across his vision. He heard muffled shouts, felt his arms wrenched behind him. Then a final memory. Agent Cole's face looming over him, eyes cold. "You led me on quite a chase," Cole hissed. "But it ends here. You disappear now. All of this remains classified." Jake's world blurred. Dust stung his eyes. The last thing he saw was the starlit sky spinning, then darkness. 3 days later, Maggie Ruiz sat alone in her cramped radio dispatch office, eyes red from lack of sleep. She'd tried every trick to reconnect with Jake. Nothing. No calls, no signals, no sightings. Rumors spread about a massive incident near Area 51. Some folks claiming to see unmarked helicopters, strange lights, entire roads sealed off. But official statements mentioned only routine military exercises. Maggie replayed the partial data Jake had managed to send. It contained half a dozen cryptic file names, fragments of lab notes referencing something called xenoform beta, and low-resolution images of a bizarre metallic skeleton. Not conclusive proof, but enough to imply something momentous. She'd attempted to share it with certain media outlets, only to face immediate pushback. The files vanished from her email drafts, her online posts flagged or removed for violating guidelines. She feared her phone might be tapped. In a last-ditch effort, she posted the partial images on fringe conspiracy forums. A handful of responses trickled in, some proclaiming fake, others calling her a hero. Then the forum threads disappeared, replaced by 404 errors. The sense of an invisible hand erasing the truth weighed heavily on her. She found a single note in her mailbox one morning typed on plain paper, "Cease and desist for your own safety." No signature, of course. Her blood ran cold. Days turned to weeks, and official channels gave no news of Jake Mercer. His trucking company listed him as having resigned abruptly. No missing persons report seemed to gain traction with authorities. As for Dr. Eli Voss, the stories varied. Some said he died in an accidental lab fire. Others claimed he never existed. The desert swiftly swallowed their footprints. Meanwhile, inside that hidden base, Agent Nathan Cole compiled a final report. With the alien recaptured barely, the facility resumed its hush-hush research. The Jake Mercer incident was chalked up to infiltration by a rogue civilian. Every mention of him within government databases was systematically purged. It was as if Jake had never been born. The same fate befell Dr. Voss, consigned to an unmarked file in an undisclosed archive, but scraps of data lingered. On a battered laptop in Maggie's apartment, partial logs remained. She spent her nights analyzing the code, searching for a key to decrypt more sections. She discovered references to a Project Lazarus, possibly indicating repeated attempts to resurrect alien biology. She found mention of trans-species synergy. The deeper she dug, the more horrifying the inferences. Something beyond her comprehension was happening under those desert sands. One quiet evening, her CB radio crackled with unexpected static. She grabbed the mic. "Jake, is that you?" The only response was white noise, then a faint beep-beep like a heartbeat. It could have been an electrical glitch or something more. She tried to respond, but the static swallowed her words. Eventually, the signal faded. She was left alone in the dark, tears welling. She refused to let go of hope that maybe somehow Jake was alive out there. Across the internet, rumors flared and died. A grainy image circulated briefly, showing an open steel container with the label off classified. Some claimed it was a hoax. Others found it consistent with older leaked photos from Area 51. Conspiracy boards buzzed only to be cleaned within hours in hushed corners of coffee shops, truck stops, and underground chat rooms. The story of the truck driver who vanished persisted. People swapped theories. He was abducted by aliens. He's in a government black site. He faked his death. No official answers came. Meanwhile, out in the desert, the nighttime wind scoured the highways, whistling through barbed wire fences. Far from the public roads, a discreet runway glowed softly where black helicopters landed silently. Deep below the earth, experiments continued on Zenform Beta. Powerful people ensured no slip-ups occurred again. Another near catastrophe might expose too much. If you drive that lonely Nevada highway late at night, you might glimpse a phantom tail light flicker in the distance. Some folks say it's the ghost of Jake Mercer forever hauling secrets across dark roads. Others dismiss it as a trick of the desert wind. But if you recall his story, you might wonder, could he still be out there? A prisoner of secrets too big to reveal? Or did they truly vanish him to a place no one returns from? In quiet moments, Maggie whispers a final promise to the empty radio waves. "I'll keep searching, Jake." I won't let them erase you, for she believes wholeheartedly that truth has a way of surfacing, even if it takes time. Perhaps one day a new whistleblower will unearth the full evidence. Alien bodies, advanced craft, living entities that defy human understanding, and the name Jake Mercer will stand as a testament to the ordinary man who got too close to the heart of secrecy. Until then, the desert remains silent, and the perimeter of Area 51 stands vigilant. Bright spotlights scanning for intruders, watchtowers manned by stoic guards, and hidden cameras capturing every movement. The base stands as a fortress of unanswered questions, and the highways at night remain eerily empty, save for the occasional 18-wheeler rolling by, its driver never suspecting how close they come to the greatest secret on Earth. Thus ends the story of Jake Mercer, the truck driver who knew too much. He stumbled upon evidence that could change humanity's view of the cosmos. And for that, he paid the ultimate price. Whether the truth will ever come to light rests in the hands of those who refuse to let shadowy corridors remain unchallenged. Because sometimes a single man's curiosity can ignite a spark that refuses to die. Elias Finch could taste both as he walked the muddy streets, notebook tucked securely in his inside pocket. At 36, his once youthful face had hardened into angular planes beneath a journalist's keen eyes, but missed little. War had taught him that truth was the first casualty in times of conflict, and peace often buried it deeper still. The boarding house on F Street, where he rented a sparse room, was unremarkable by design. Anonymity was a currency more valuable than gold in his profession. As the publisher of The Honest Witness, an underground pamphlet that had exposed profiteering and corruption throughout the war, Elias had made powerful enemies. Yet his readership had grown steadily. passed hand to hand beneath the noses of the politicians he regularly skewered with his words. The war may be ending, but the real fighting is just beginning, he muttered, climbing the creaking stairs to his room. Inside, papers covered every available surface. Notes, letters from informants, newspaper clippings. A small printing press stood in the corner, capable of producing several hundred pamphlets in a night's work. He lit the oil lamp and retrieved his latest draft from beneath a loose floorboard. The headline read, "Serpents in the Cabinet, Lincoln surrounded by traitors." Bold, even by his standards. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. 3 quick raps, a pause, then 2 more. The signal. Elias opened the door cautiously to reveal a haggard-looking man in a wrinkled Union uniform. Colonel James Simmons had been feeding him information for months. Details of war profiteering that had made the backbone of Elias most damning exposes. "You shouldn't be here," Elias said, quickly ushering him inside. "We agreed to meet at Harper's tomorrow." Simmons removed his cap, revealing prematurely gray hair. His hands trembled slightly. "Tomorrow might be too late. Something's happening, Finch, something big, another contract scandal, more missing supplies." Simmons shook his head, accepting the whiskey Elias offered. "This goes deeper than money. It's about power. We'll hold it now that the fighting's done." He drained the glass in one swallow. "Lincoln's making enemies faster than he can count them." "Not exactly news," Elias replied, though something in the colonel's demeanor made him uneasy. "The South wants him dead. Half his generals think he's too soft, and the radicals in his own party find him insufferable. It's worse than that." Simmons lowered his voice. "There have been meetings, important men, military, cabinet members, banking interests. They speak of necessary transition and securing the victory. Names, Colonel, I need names, that's just it. I don't have them all, but I've seen strange insignias, not official military. A phoenix rising from flames." Simmons glanced nervously at the window, and Secretary Stanton. He's at the center somehow. Edwin Stanton, Lincoln's own Secretary of War. Elias scribbled furiously in his notebook. "Watch the Treasury building tomorrow night, midnight back entrance. You'll see for yourself who comes and goes." Simmons rose to leave. "Be careful who you trust, Finch." The war created new alliances, not all of them in the open. After Simmons departed, Elias couldn't settle. He paced his small room, mind racing. Edwin Stanton had always struck him as brutally efficient but loyal to the Union cause. Yet the colonel had seemed genuinely frightened. As darkness fell, Elias took to the streets. Washington, after sundown, transformed into a different city, one where power moved in whispers and shadows. He made his way toward the White House, keeping to side streets. The spring air carried voices from open windows, celebrations, arguments, the raw emotions of a nation still processing its wounds. Near Lafayette Square, a convoy of unmarked carriages caught his attention. Black lacquered with no insignia, windows covered with thick curtains. They moved with military precision toward the executive mansion. As they passed a street lamp, Elias glimpsed something on the door of the lead carriage, a small emblem of what appeared to be a bird with outstretched wings. Following at a distance, he watched the carriages disappear through a side entrance of the White House grounds. A figure emerged briefly to greet them, tall, bearded, with the unmistakable profile of Secretary Stanton. Elias made a note of the time. 11:17 p.m. the following day brought news that General Lee had formally surrendered at Appomattox Courthouse. Washington erupted in celebration. Impromptu parades formed on Pennsylvania Avenue. Bottles of champagne appeared from nowhere. Soldiers embraced in the streets. The long nightmare of war was officially over. But beneath the revelry, Elias sensed something else, a current of uncertainty, of plans being whispered behind closed doors. That evening, as promised, he positioned himself near the Treasury building, hat pulled low, collar turned up against the spring chill. At precisely midnight, carriages began arriving, not the marked conveyances of government officials, but private vehicles with drawn curtains. Men emerged quickly, faces obscured, and disappeared inside a door Elias knew to be a service entrance. He counted 12 in total, recognizing a few profiles despite their attempts at anonymity: the Supreme Court Justice, 2 generals, what appeared to be Vice President Johnson himself. Last to arrive was a smaller carriage. When its occupant stepped out, Elias had to stifle a gasp. Senator Lafayette Baker, head of the National Detective Police, Lincoln's own spy master, was unmistakable even in the dim gaslight. Before entering, Baker paused, scanning the darkness as if sensing Elias's presence. On his lapel glinted a small pin, a phoenix rising from flames. For 3 hours, Elias waited in the shadows, fighting the cold and his own growing dread. When the men finally emerged, their expressions were solemn, purposeful. Something had been decided in that room, something that would never appear in any official record. Back in his lodgings, Elias worked feverishly until dawn, connecting threads, forming theories. His hands shook as he sketched out the emblem he'd seen, the Phoenix insignia. Below it he wrote, "The Order of the Phoenix, secret society or military faction." As morning light crept through his window, Elias heard newsboys already crying the headlines: "Victory complete. Lincoln to attend Ford's Theater tomorrow night." An odd chill ran through him as he recalled Simmons's warning. Something big is about to happen. He glanced at his notes. The mysterious meetings, the Phoenix emblem, Stanton's involvement, the timing of it all. A terrible suspicion began to form in his mind, one he dared not even write down. But one thing was certain. He needed to be at Ford's Theater tomorrow night. April 14th dawned bright and clear, a Good Friday that seemed to herald the nation's rebirth after its long crucible of war. Flags hung from every building on Pennsylvania Avenue. Church bells rang throughout the day, not in mourning as they had for 4 years, but in celebration. Elias spent the morning visiting contacts, trading information in the back rooms of taverns and print shops. The name, Order of the Phoenix, drew blank stares or nervous glances. No one would speak of it directly, but their silence told him enough. The name carried weight, inspired fear. By mid-afternoon, he had secured a ticket to Ford's Theater. Our American cousin was not his idea of quality entertainment, but the president's attendance made it the center of Washington that night. If his suspicions had any merit, he needed to be there. As dusk settled, Elias dressed with unusual care. His customary rumpled journalist attire was replaced by a respectable suit and cravat, nondescript enough to blend with the theater crowd, but fine enough not to attract unwanted attention. He slipped his notebook into an inner pocket along with a small revolver, a precaution he'd never needed before. But tonight felt different. Ford's Theater blazed with light as he approached. The 3-story brick building on 10th Street had become the center of Washington's society since its renovation 2 years earlier. Tonight, it seemed all of official Washington had turned out, a celebration of victory personified by the attendance of the president himself. Elias noted the security surprisingly light for such an occasion. A few Metropolitan Police officers milled about, but there was none of the military presence one might expect given the recent end of hostilities. He studied the faces of those entering. Politicians, military officers, social climbers of every variety. All seemed caught up in the festive atmosphere, yet Elias couldn't shake the feeling of performances within performances. In the crowded lobby, he spotted a face he recognized. John Parker, a notoriously unreliable presidential bodyguard known more for his drinking than his vigilance. Parker seemed distracted, already glancing toward the bar across the street. Elias made a mental note, taking his seat in the dress circle one level below the presidential box. Elias had a clear view of both the stage and the entrance to Lincoln's box. The theater hummed with anticipation. Ladies in silk gowns fanned themselves. Gentlemen exchanged handshakes and political whispers. At precisely 8:30, a stir near the entrance announced the presidential party's arrival. The orchestra struck up "Hail to the Chief." As Lincoln entered, tall and gaunt in his black suit, accompanied by his wife Mary, Major Henry Withbone, and his fiancée Clara Harris, the audience rose in thunderous applause. Lincoln bowed slightly, his weary face breaking into that familiar melancholy smile. As the play began, Elias divided his attention between the stage and the movements around the theater. 20 minutes into the performance, he noticed a man in a dark coat slip into the dress circle, moving with the confident ease of someone who knew the building well. Even from profile, the actor John Wilkes Booth was unmistakable, his handsome features and theatrical bearing marking him as clearly as a signature. What caught Elias' attention, however, was not Booth himself, but the man who briefly intercepted him near the back wall, a Union officer whose insignia identified him as a staff colonel. The two exchanged what appeared to be a few tour words. The officer pressed something into Booth's hand, a small object that disappeared instantly into the actor's pocket. Their interaction lasted perhaps 10 seconds before they separated, the officer retreating toward the stairwell. Elias' journalistic instincts flared. He rose quietly, intending to follow the officer when he noticed something else. A flash of metal on the man's collar. Even from a distance, the shape was familiar. A small phoenix emblem identical to the one he'd seen on Senator Baker's lapel. Before Elias could process this, Booth had already moved toward the president's box. With growing alarm, Elias watched the actor pause outside the entrance. The expected guard, Parker, was nowhere to be seen. Booth seemed to check the corridor before slipping inside. What happened next would forever burn itself into the nation's consciousness. The sharp crack of a pistol, Mary Lincoln's piercing scream, Booth leaping from the box to the stage, catching his spur in a Treasury Guard flag, landing awkwardly but still managing to brandish his knife and shout words that would echo through history. 6 emperor tyrannies. The theater erupted into chaos. Women fainted. Men shouted. Someone screamed, "The president is shot." From his position, Elias could see into the presidential box where Lincoln slumped in his rocking chair, a dark stain spreading across his collar. As pandemonium engulfed the theater, Elias' trained eye caught details others missed. The surprising ease with which Booth escaped through the rear door, where a horse conveniently waited, the momentary hesitation of guards who should have moved more quickly, and most disturbing of all, the Union colonel with the Phoenix insignia, calmly observing from the shadows before slipping out a side exit, not in pursuit of Booth, but in the opposite direction. Elias fought his way through the panicked crowd toward that exit. By the time he reached the alley, the colonel had vanished. Nearby, a stagehand was babbling hysterically to anyone who would listen. Booth, it was John Wilkes Booth. The man who spoke to Booth, Elias demanded, grabbing the stagehand's shoulder. "The officer, did you see where he went?" The stagehand stared blankly. "What officer?" "The Union colonel. He was right here not a minute ago." "Mister, there weren't no officers back here." Just that crazy Booth running out like the devil himself was after him. Elias pushed past, scanning the alley. Nothing. It was as if the man had evaporated into the night air. Behind him, the sounds of chaos poured from the theater. Someone was shouting for a doctor. Someone else was calling for soldiers. As military personnel began arriving, Elias melted into the crowd gathering on 10th Street. His mind raced, attempting to process what he had witnessed. Lincoln shot Booth as the trigger man. But that exchange, the missing guard, the convenient horse, the colonel with a phoenix emblem who'd spoken to Booth moments before, none of it felt like the act of a lone madman. By midnight, the city had transformed. Troops patrolled every street. Crowds gathered outside the Petersonen house across from the theater, where doctors fought to save the president's life. Rumors flew like startled birds. The vice president had also been attacked. Secretary Seard had been stabbed in his bed. Confederate sympathizers were storming the city. Elias worked his way through the crowd, gathering fragments of conversation, watching which officials came and went. Shortly before 1:00, he spotted Secretary Stanton arriving, his face a mask of controlled fury. As Stanton pushed through toward the house where Lincoln lay dying, Elias caught a glimpse of who accompanied him. The same colonel from the theater, now openly wearing his phoenix insignia, as if it were an official military decoration. Their eyes met briefly across the chaotic street. The colonel's gaze was cold, evaluating and unmistakably warning. Then he disappeared inside behind Stanton, where the fate of the nation was being decided while its leader slipped away. By dawn, when Lincoln finally surrendered to his wound, Elias had filled his notebook with observations that contradicted the narrative already forming in official circles. As the bells of Washington began to toll, he slipped away from the crowds, certain of only one thing. What he had witnessed at Ford's Theater was not the impulsive act of a Southern sympathizer, but the opening move in a much larger game. The city awoke to church bells and black crepe. By noon on April 15th, Washington had transformed into a city of mourning. Black fabric draped from windows and balconies. Women wept openly in the streets. Men stood in stunned silence outside newspaper offices, reading the bulletins posted every hour. Elias moved through this landscape of grief like a ghost. His journalist's mind cataloging the discrepancies that were already appearing between what he had witnessed and what was being reported. The papers called Booth a Southern fanatic acting alone. No mention of the officer who had spoken with him. No questions about the convenient absence of the president's guard. No curiosity about how easily the assassin had accessed the box. Most telling was how quickly the official narrative formed. Before Lincoln's body was cold, before any real investigation could begin, the story had already solidified. A vengeful actor driven by Confederate sympathies had struck a final blow for the lost Southern cause. Elias made his way to a small printing shop off East Street owned by a German immigrant named Mueller who had printed The Honest Witness throughout the war. The old man's face was grave as Elias entered. "I cannot print for you any more, Herr Finch," Mueller said before Elias could speak. "Men came this morning, government men." "What men? What do they want?" Mueller's hands trembled as he rearranged already perfectly ordered type. "They asked about you, about your pamphlet. They took my customer ledger." He lowered his voice. "They had that look, Finch, the look of men who break things that cannot be fixed. Did they threaten you directly?" "They didn't need to." Mueller glanced nervously at the window. One of them said, "The country needs unity now, not troublemakers." Then he put his hand on my printing press and said, "Beautiful machine. Would be a shame if something happened to it, or to your immigration papers." Elias felt a familiar anger rising. I need to print what I saw last night. Hinrich, the truth about what happened at Ford's. Not here, you won't. Miller pressed a key into Elia's palm. Back room of Kennedy's tobacco shop. My brother's old press is there. It's yours if you need it. But Finch, his eyes were pleading, be careful. These are dangerous times to question powerful men. By late afternoon, Elias had established himself at Kennedy's. The small press was outdated but functional. As he arranged his notes, preparing to write, a knock came at the door. His hand moved instinctively to the revolver in his pocket. A woman's voice called softly, Mr. Finch, Adelaide Booker. I was at Ford's last night. Elias opened the door more carefully. Adelaide Booker was in her 40s, a seamstress who had worked at the theater for years. They had spoken several times when Elias was researching a piece on wartime entertainment. I saw you following that officer, she said without preamble once inside. The one with a strange pin, has pulse quickened. Tell me exactly what you saw. I was mending a curtain backstage when Mr. Booth arrived. He seemed anxious, checking his pocket watch. Then that officer came in the stage door, which was unusual itself. They spoke briefly. The officer gave him something small, metallic. Her voice dropped to a whisper and he said, remember, wait for the laugh line in Act 3, Scene 2, not before. Then he left through the same door. Would you recognize this officer again? Adelaide nodded. Colonel Atticus Wade. He's been to the theater before, always asking about who sits where, studying the layout. She clutched her shawl tighter. I shouldn't be here. My sister says men have been asking questions about everyone who worked last night. After Adelaide left, Ellis worked furiously into the evening, writing an account of what he'd witnessed, including the seamstress's testimony. He titled it simply Questions About Ford's Theater. By midnight, he had printed 200 copies, ready for distribution. As he stepped out into the alley behind Kennedy's, the shape detached itself from the shadows. Elias reached for his revolver, but a familiar voice stopped him. I wouldn't Finch. There are 3 rifles trained on you right now. Colonel Simmons stepped into the dim light of the gas lamp, his uniform immaculate, his expression unreadable. You said something big was coming, Elias said. You knew. I suspected. There's a difference. Simmons glanced at the bundle of pamphlets under Elias' arm. Those won't see daylight. The city's locked down. Every street corner has a soldier or a detective. Since when do you care about suppressing the truth? Since Secretary Stanton declared martial law an hour ago, Simmons sighed heavily. The official story is that Booth acted with Confederate conspirators. Anyone suggesting otherwise is undermining national security in a time of crisis. Elias stared at him. You're part of it, the Order of the Phoenix. Simmons flinched almost imperceptibly. That name isn't to be spoken aloud, especially now. He stepped closer. Listen to me carefully, Finch. What's done is done. Lincoln was too soft for what comes next. The South needs to be crushed, not coddled. The Phoenix understands this, and Booth just a convenient madman you could manipulate. A useful patriot who believed he was serving the Confederacy when in fact he served a greater purpose. Simmons looked genuinely sad. The country needed a villain and he provided one. Now the real work begins. Stanton Wade Baker, how deep does this go? Instead of answering, Simmons handed him a folded paper. This was left for you. I'd burn it after reading. The paper contained just 5 lines in a flowing script. The Phoenix rises from necessary fire. What seems an ending is merely transformation. Those who see too clearly become blinded. E.F. Choose wisely where blindness falls. April 16th, midnight, Congressional Cemetery, Hamilton plot. When Elias looked up, Simmons had vanished. The alley was empty, save for a stray dog nosing through garbage. Above, the stars were obscured by clouds that promised rain. That night, Elias returned to his lodgings to find it had been searched thoroughly and professionally. Papers rearranged, floorboards loosened, even the mattress sliced open. His latest notes were gone. On his desk sat a newspaper folded open to a small item. Adelaide Booker, seamstress at Ford's Theatre, tragically took her own life this evening, overcome by grief at witnessing the president's assassination. Lees felt cold sweat break out across his forehead. Adelaide had been fine mere hours ago, determined, cleared. The message was unmistakable. Witnesses could be erased as easily as words on paper. For the next 24 hours, Elias moved cautiously through a city transformed. Military checkpoints had sprung up overnight. Men in plain clothes, but with the unmistakable bearing of detectives, watched from street corners. Newspapers printed identical accounts of the assassination as if working from the same script. Booth was now the most hunted man in America, but Elias noticed the search seemed strangely performative. Lots of visible activity, little actual progress. On the evening of April 16th, as the first drops of rain began to fall, Elias made his way to Congressional Cemetery. The Hamilton plot was easy to find, a grand marble obelisk marking the resting place of a forgotten congressman. As midnight approached, Elias waited in the shadows of a nearby mausoleum, revolver ready. At precisely midnight, a carriage arrived. A solitary figure emerged carrying a lantern, tall, distinguished, instantly recognizable despite the darkness and rain. Secretary of War Edwin Stanton himself, the second most powerful man in the government, now effectively ruling the nation, while Vice President Johnson floundered in his new role. Mr. Distur Finch, Stanton called, his voice carrying clearly despite the rain. I know you're here. Let's dispense with theatrics. If I wanted you dead, you would be. Elias stepped cautiously from his hiding place. Like Adelaide Booker, Stanton's expression didn't change, regrettable but necessary. Some people cannot adapt to changing circumstances. He studied Elias with shrewd eyes. You, I think, are more practical. Is that why you're here? To discover my price? To offer you perspective? Stanton set the lantern on a nearby grave marker. What do you think you know, Mr. Finch? I know Lincoln was assassinated by conspiracy, not by a lone madman. I know the Order of the Phoenix, whatever it is, orchestrated it. I know you're involved. Stanton nodded slowly. Not inaccurate, but incomplete. The Phoenix is not what you imagine, not some cabal of power-hungry monsters. We are patriots who understand that sometimes surgery is required to save the patient. And Lincoln was the disease. Lincoln was an obstacle. Stanton's voice softened slightly. A good man, but one whose compassion would have destroyed what we fought for. His plan for malice toward none would have allowed the same Southern aristocracy to reclaim power within a decade. The war would have been for nothing. A cold certainty settled in Elias' stomach. So you had him killed. We had him removed, Stanton corrected, for the greater good. Now reconstruction will proceed as it must with the firm hand the South requires. He stepped closer. History is shaped by those who control its narrative, Mr. Finch. You could be part of that shaping. You want me to be your propagandist. I want you to be realistic. Your talents are considerable. The honest witness showed that the country needs unity now, not discord. Stanton reached into his coat and produced a leather portfolio. Inside is a commission, a special correspondent of the War Department, along with enough evidence to suggest you've been working for us all along. The choice is simple. Join us and write the history we need, or fight us and be written out of it entirely. He placed the portfolio atop the grave marker and returned to his carriage. Before entering, he paused. One day when passions have cooled, the truth can emerge. but not now, not for decades. The rain intensified, nearly drowning his final words. Choose wisely, Mr. Finch. By tomorrow, there will be no other choices left. Rain pounded Washington for 3 days after Stanton's ultimatum. As if the heavens themselves mourned Lincoln, Elias remained in hiding, moving between safe houses known only to the network of informants and dissident he had cultivated during the war. The portfolio Stanton had offered remained unopened in his coat, Pandora's box of temptation and compromise. On the third night, as thunder rolled across the Capitol, Elias met with Mueller in the cellar of a church whose minister had secretly treated wounded Confederate soldiers during the war. The street papers say Booth has fled south, Mueller reported, shaking rain from his coat. But I heard from my cousin who drives a supply wagon. Soldiers searched the Surratt boarding house again today, tore up floorboards, broke down walls. They're looking for something, Elias mused, something they think Booth left behind. Or something they planted that they now need to recover. Mueller hesitated. There are rumors about a diary. This caught Elias' attention. Booth kept a diary. So they say, a small red leather book where he wrote his thoughts, his plans, the kind of thing that might reveal who he spoke to, who gave him orders. Elias' journalistic instinct flared. Such a diary would be the evidence he needed. Who told you this? The clerk at the War Department. He was drunk talking too freely at Hannigan's Tavern. Said Stanton himself ordered every inch of the boarding house searched. Said the secretary was white as a ghost when he gave the order. The implications were clear. If Booth had recorded his contacts with the Order of the Phoenix with Wade or Baker or Stanton himself, such evidence would shatter the carefully constructed narrative of a lone assassin. Elias made his decision. I need to get into Surratt's boarding house. Impossible, Mueller protested. It's guarded day and night. Nothing is impossible, Elias counted, merely inconvenient. He had not spent years cultivating informants and mapping the hidden geography of Washington without learning a few tricks. Are the old tunnel entrances still accessible? Mueller's eyes widened. Smuggling tunnels. Some perhaps, but they haven't been used since the early days of the war. Washington's geography held secrets unknown to most citizens. Beneath certain buildings, particularly near the Navy Yard and along the riverfront, network of tunnels had been used early in the war to move supplies, information, and occasionally people. Most had been sealed or forgotten, but Elias had mapped them meticulously for a story he had never published. That night, guided by nothing but memory and a crude map drawn in his notebook, Elias descended into Washington's underground labyrinth. The entrance, a rusted door behind a false wall in the cellar of an abandoned warehouse, creaked ominously as he forced it open. The tunnel beyond was damp, the air heavy with mold and decay. His lantern cast grotesque shadows as he navigated the narrow passage, counting intersections, measuring distances by paces. After nearly an hour of careful progress, he reached what his calculations suggested should be directly beneath H Street and the Surratt boarding house. A metal ladder bolted to the wall led upward into darkness. Elias extinguished his lantern and climbed, emerging into what appeared to be a small storage cellar. Dust covered everything undisturbed over a single set of boot prints that stopped near the far wall. Elias examined the wall carefully, noting a slight discoloration in the mortar between several bricks. Using his pocket knife, he scraped away the new mortar, revealing a loose brick. When he removed it, his fingers touched something soft inside the cavity. Leather. With trembling hands, he extracted a small red book, its cover unmarked. Opening it revealed pages filled with an elegant theatrical hand. Booth's diary, hidden where he thought it would be safe, or perhaps where someone had instructed him to conceal it. Elias tucked the diary into his coat and retraced his steps through the tunnel. Back in the relative safety of the church cellar, he finally examined his prize by lamplight. The diary was not what he had expected. Rather than a detailed account of the conspiracy, it contained the rambling justifications of a man convinced of his own historical importance. Booth compared himself to Brutus, writing of striking down the tyrant to avenge the South. Yet scattered among these self-aggrandizing passages were troubling inconsistencies. One entry from March read, "Met with W. Againane. He assures me that once it is done, I will be hailed as a hero throughout the South. Arrangements have been made for my escape. I am to follow the route exactly as planned, making contact at each designated safe house until I reach safety in Virginia." Another more disturbing entry from early April. "The order has guaranteed my place in history. Their reach extends to the highest levels of government, to men whose names I dare not commit to paper. They speak of a reborn nation purified by fire, where true patriots will guide America to its rightful destiny. I am merely the instrument of this necessary transformation." Most revealing was an entry from April 13th, the day before the assassination, final meeting with C.W. He provided the derringer and confirmed the timing. Act 3, Scene 2. During the laugh line, when the noise will mask the shot, the guard will be absent. This has been arranged. I expressed concern about escaping through the crowded theater, but C.W. assured me that certain doors would be unobstructed. He gave me the small token to identify myself to those helping along the escape route, a bronze phoenix rising from flames. Elias read until dawn, piecing together the conspiracy. The diary never explicitly named the order of the phoenix, but its influence was clear in every arrangement, every coincidence that smoothed Booth's path. The assassination had been meticulously planned with collaborators positioned throughout Ford's theater and along the escape route, but the diary raised as many questions as it answered. Who was C.W.? Colonel Wade, perhaps? And what of the higher powers Booth alluded to, but never named directly? Stanton was an obvious suspect, but the diary suggested the conspiracy reached even further into banking interests that had profited from the war. Foreign connections that feared Lincoln's plans for Reconstruction, even radical Republicans who found the president too moderate. Armed with Booth's own words, Elias began drafting what would become The Murder of the Republic, his most explosive pamphlet yet. For 3 days, he wrote feverishly in a room for sympathetic bookshop, connecting threads between Booth's diary, his own observations, and the strange behavior of government officials in the aftermath. He identified key members of the Order of the Phoenix, Stanton at its center, Colonel Atticus Wade as its military enforcer, Lafayette Baker using the detective police to control information, and at least 3 cabinet members whom he suspected based on their sudden policy reversals after Lincoln's death. On April the 24th, as the first copies came off the press, news flashed across Washington. John Wilkes Booth had been cornered in a Virginia tobacco barn and killed, shot, they said, by a zealous soldier against orders to take him alive. Conveniently, the primary witness was now beyond questioning. Elias worked through the night, adding a final section to his pamphlet detailing the suspicious circumstances of Booth's death. As dawn broke on April 25th, 200 copies of The Murder of the Republic sat ready for distribution. The ink barely dry. He never got the chance to release them. The door splintered inward just after sunrise. 6 men in plain clothes, but with military bearings, stormed into the small room, weapons drawn. They wore no uniforms, carried no identification, but Elias recognized their leader, Lafayette Baker himself, head of the National Detective Police, the man who had supposedly directed the hunt for Booth. Elias Finch, Baker announced without preamble, "You are under arrest for sedition and interference with a military investigation." Elias had expected this moment, had prepared for it, but the reality still struck him like a physical blow. Under whose authority? Martial law has not been declared in the district. Baker smiled thinly. Special wartime powers extended by executive order following the assassination of President Lincoln. The paperwork is irrelevant. You're coming with us. Behind him, Maya Torres rolled her eyes but kept quiet. As his production partner and the technical wizard behind the scenes, she'd heard this speech before. MK Ultra experiments. The MTOK project time travel claims moonlanding anomalies. Jason had covered it all with obsessive detail, but this time was different. This wasn't just talk. "Cut the recording," Jason said, spinning his chair to face Maya. "Did you get the email?" Maya nodded, tucking a strand of black hair behind her ear. "Desert Valley Logistics. You got the job." Background check cleared somehow. Not somehow. Jason grinned, looking more like an excited kid than a 31-year-old man. 6 months of careful planning, fake references, clean digital footprint, the works. Mir's expression remained skeptical. Food service delivery to a military installation isn't exactly breaking into Area 51, Jason. It's getting me through the front door, he counted. And that's more than anyone else has managed. The plan had been brewing for over a year. Jason had been tracking Desert Valley Logistics, a civilian contractor that supplied meal services to various military installations across Nevada, including the Nevada Test and Training Range, home to the facility known as Area 51. Maya pulled up the encrypted files on her tablet. "Let's go through it again. I start the job on Monday. Standard deliveries for the first month, building trust. Then I start mapping routes, security patterns, checkpoint procedures while wearing specially designed glasses with microscopic cameras," Mia added, "which by the way cost us nearly all our equipment budget." "Worth it," Jason insisted, "undetectable to standard security sweeps. Images get transmitted to your setup in the van through the modified watch." The plan was intricate. Jason would work the job legitimately, slowly gathering intelligence. Maya would build a mobile command center in a van equipped with signal boosters, satellite uplinks, and a complex VPN system to mask their broadcast location. After months of preparation and dry runs, Jason would make his move during a scheduled delivery, breaking away from the designated path to explore and document the facility's most restricted areas. "You know, this isn't just trespassing, right?" Maya said. "This is federal property, highly classified. We're talking serious prison time." Jason's face grew serious. "Do you know why I do this, Maya? For the views, the subscribers?" "No." He turned to a corkboard on the wall covered in newspaper clippings, printed forum posts, and red string connecting various points. "My dad worked at Groom Lake for 12 years. Came home one day with headaches that never stopped. 2 months later, brain cancer, stage 4, no history in our family." Maya's expression softened. "Jason." "He tried to tell my mom something before he died. Something about non-terrestrial intelligence, about things in the sky that weren't from here. They had him on so many medications she thought he was delirious." Jason's voice cracked slightly. "But I believe him, and I need proof," Maya sighed, knowing there was no talking him out of it. "The stream goes to a secure server first," she said, returning to the plan. If anything happens to you, it automatically uploads to 17 different platforms simultaneously. Dead man's switch. Jason nodded. Perfect. Not the term I'd use, Mom muttered. The next 6 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Jason settled into his delivery job, memorizing protocols and building a reputation as a reliable, if unmemorable, employee. Mia transformed an old van into a mobile broadcast studio with backup generators, multiple internet connections, and emergency protocols. They tested the equipment repeatedly in the desert, finding the ideal spots where Mia could park without arousing suspicion while maintaining signal strength. The hidden cameras worked flawlessly, transmitting crystal-clear footage to Mia's receivers. Jason's followers noticed his reduced posting schedule, but he kept them engaged with cryptic updates, researching something big. Truth is coming, and some secrets can't stay buried. His subscriber count finally crossed the 1 million mark, though he barely acknowledged it. His mind was elsewhere. 2 days before the planned infiltration, Mia caught Jason staring at an old photograph of his father. "We can still back out," she said quietly. Jason shook his head. "We've come too far. And if there's nothing to find, if it's just a regular military base, then I'll report that." "But it's not," Jason insisted. "Remember the truck driver from last month, the one who claimed he saw something during a late-night delivery?" Maya remembered a post on a fringe forum describing unusual aircraft movements and what the poster called non-standard personnel with strange physical characteristics. The post had been removed within hours and the account deleted. "Could be a hoax," she said. "Or it could be confirmation," Jason countered. "Either way, we're going to find out." The night before the operation, neither of them could sleep. Jason ran through the plan one final time while Mia triplet checked her equipment. "Camera feeds are clear," she confirmed. "Audio is good. Encrypted channel is ready." Jason nodded, unexpectedly quiet. "Having second thoughts?" Maya asked. "No," he said after a moment. "Just thinking about how this might be the most important thing we ever do." Mia reached out and squeezed his hand. "Just stick to the plan. Get in. Document what you can. Get out. No heroics." "Yes, Mom," Jason replied with a small smile. Neither of them mentioned what they were both thinking, that by this time tomorrow, they might have changed history or disappeared from it entirely. The Nevada desert stretched endlessly under the morning sun. As Jason guided the delivery truck along the lonely highway, the air conditioning struggled against the heat, and his palms were slick with sweat on the steering wheel. "Check 1 is coming up in 2 miles. His voice came through his nearly invisible earpiece. "Remember, just like any other delivery." "Copy that," Jason murmured, adjusting his uniform shirt. The Desert Valley Logistics logo felt like a disguise now, not just work attire. The first checkpoint was routine, a guard station at the edge of the Nevada test and training range. Jason had been through it dozens of times over the past months. He handed over his ID badge, manifest, and delivery authorization. "Morning, Reeve," said the guard. A man named Peterson, who Jason had become casually friendly with early today. Traffic was light, Jason replied with a rehearsed ease. His glasses were recording everything, transmitting to Maya in the van parked 3 mi back. "All clear," Peterson said after checking the documents. "Stay on the designated route." Jason nodded and pulled forward. The first gate lifted and he entered the outer perimeter of the restricted area. His heart pounded as the truck rumbled down the road, kicking up dust behind it. "First checkpoint clear," he whispered to Maya. "How's the feed?" "Crystal clear," she replied. 35 people already watching the private stream. "Remember, I'm not releasing this publicly until you're safely out." The road stretched ahead for miles. Empty desert on both sides, watched by distant camera towers. Jason had mapped them all during previous deliveries. He knew their blind spots, their ranges. Second checkpoint in sight, he reported after 15 minutes of driving. This one was different, more serious. Armed military personnel instead of civilian contractors. Jason felt his pulse quicken as he pulled to a stop. 2 guards approached the truck. One took his paperwork while the other walked around the vehicle with a mirror on a pole, checking underneath for anything suspicious. "Please step out of the vehicle, sir," the first guard requested. Jason complied, feeling unusually aware of the weight of the hidden camera glasses on his face, the watch on his wrist, quietly transmitting everything back to Maya. "Routine inspection," guard explained, though his tone suggested there was nothing routine about it. "Arms out, please." Jason extended his arms as the guard passed a handheld scanner over him. The device beeped over his watch. "Standard issue company tracker," Jason explained before the guard could ask. "All delivery personnel wear them. Safety protocol." The guard nodded, seemingly satisfied. Jason had carefully modified the watch to appear as a simple GPS tracker if scanned, concealing its true communications capabilities. "Your delivery today is for the mess hall?" the guard asked, consulting the manifest. "Yes, sir, weekly supply run. Nothing exciting, just food." God's eyes lingered on Jason's face a moment too long. "You've been doing this route for a while now." "About 3 months," Jason replied, keeping his voice steady. "It's a good gig, no traffic out here." After what felt like an eternity, the guard handed back his paperwork. "Proceed to delivery point Charlie. Do not deviate from the marked route. Any unauthorized stops or detours will result in immediate detention." "Understood," Jason said, climbing back into the truck. As the second gate opened, Jason felt a shift in the air. He was entering Area 51 proper now, a place few civilians had ever seen from the inside. "I'm in," he whispered to Mir as he drove through. "Second checkpoint cleared. Viewer count is climbing," Mia reported. "People are sharing the private link. Nearly 200 watching now." The road ahead dipped down into a valley. From this vantage point, Jason could see the sprawling complex for the first time without obstruction. It was larger than he'd imagined. A collection of hangars, administration buildings, and structures with no obvious purpose, all protected by layers of security, fences, and what he assumed were motion sensors. "This is it, Maya," he said quietly. "No turning back now." The delivery route led him to a loading dock attached to what appeared to be a commissary building. As he'd done many times before, Jason backed the truck up to the platform and put it in park. "Routine delivery," he announced to the 2 workers waiting for him. "I've got 26 crates for you today." One of the workers, a heavy-set man named Gaza, who Jason recognized from previous deliveries, nodded. "We'll take it from here." This was the moment of truth, the point where Jason was supposed to stay with the truck while the workers unloaded it. Instead, he casually reached for a clipboard. "Actually," he said, "I need to verify the cold storage items personally. New company policy after the spoilage incident last month." Garza looked annoyed but shrugged. "Fine, follow me." This was exactly what Jason had hoped for, an invitation inside. He followed Gaza through a set of double doors into the facility, mentally mapping every turn they took. "Feed still good," he whispered when Gaza was a few steps ahead. "Perfect," Maya confirmed in his ear. "But be careful. This is already further than we planned for the first phase." They entered a large kitchen area, then through another door to a walk-in refrigerator. Jason made a show of checking temperatures and inspecting packages while his glasses recorded everything. "I need to use the restroom," Jason said after completing his inspection. Is there one I can use? Gaza pointed down a hallway through there, first door on the left. Jason nodded thanks and walked in that direction, heart hammering in his chest. The moment Gaza was out of sight, he took the first right instead of the left, heading deeper into the facility. Jason, Ma's voice had an edge of panic. What are you doing? This isn't the plan. Change of plans, he whispered back. I might not get another chance this good. He moved quickly but naturally, as if he belonged there. The corridors were surprisingly mundane. White walls, linoleum floors, occasional bulletin boards with safety notices and shift schedules. 600 viewers now, Maya reported. Word is spreading fast. Jason approached a junction where the institutional appearance of the hallway changed. The new corridor had darker walls and no windows. A keypad security system guarded the entrance. Dead end, Jason murmured, preparing to turn back. Just then, the door opened. A woman in a lab coat emerged, engrossed in reading something on a tablet. Jason made a split-second decision. Excuse me, he called out, adopting a confused tone. I think I'm lost, looking for the loading dock. The woman looked up, startled. How did you get in this section through there? Jason pointed vaguely behind him. I'm with the food delivery, first time on this route. She looked suspicious but seemed to accept his explanation. This is a restricted area. Go back the way you came. Take the second left and follow the signs. Thanks, Jason said, already planning his next move. As the woman walked away, he noticed she hadn't fully closed the door behind her. The security lock hadn't engaged. Jason, don't, Ma warned, reading his thoughts, but it was too late. Jason slipped through the door before it closed completely, entering the restricted area. I'm in, he whispered, feeling a rush of adrenaline. And Maya, you won't believe what I'm seeing. Define what you're seeing, Maya demanded, her voice tense in Jason's ear, and start moving back toward the exit. Now, Jason stood frozen in the corridor, his mind struggling to process what lay before him. Unlike the ordinary hallways of the main facility, this section felt alien in both design and purpose. The walls, he whispered, turning slowly so his glasses could capture everything. They're lined with some kind of metal, not steel, something else. It has a dull glow. The corridor curved gently, illuminated by recessed lighting that pulsed subtly, almost like a heartbeat. There were no doors visible, no obvious junctions or branches, just the single path leading forward. Viewer count just passed 1,000. Maya reported the stream is spreading like wildfire. But Jason, seriously, you need to retreat. This wasn't part of the plan. I can't, Jason replied, his voice filled with wonder as he began walking forward. Not when I'm this close. The floor beneath his feet hummed with barely perceptible vibrations. As he advanced, the temperature dropped noticeably, his breath beginning to form small clouds in front of him. There are markings on the walls, he continued, his glasses focusing on strange symbols etched into the metal. Not English, not anything I recognize. Jason, security will notice you're missing any minute now, Maya warned. Wait, Jason stopped abruptly. Do you hear that? Through the earpiece, Ma could hear it, too. A low, melodic hum that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It rose and fell in patterns that felt almost intentional, like communication. What is that? She whispered. I don't know, Jason replied, continuing forward. The corridor widened gradually, opening into a circular chamber. But I think I'm about to find out. He stepped into the chamber and gasped audibly. The room was dominated by a suspended structure at its center, an object that defied easy description. It appeared partly organic, partly technological, hovering 3 ft above the floor without any visible means of support. Are you seeing this, Maya? Jason's voice trembled. Tell me you're recording this. I'm recording, she confirmed, her skepticism momentarily forgotten. But Jason, what is that thing? The object pulsed with internal light, blues and purples that shifted and swirled beneath what looked like a translucent membrane. It was roughly a void, perhaps 10 ft in diameter, with appendages or protrusions that extended and retracted slowly, as if exploring the air around it. "It's responding to my presence," Jason whispered, taking a step closer. The light patterns changed when I entered. Around the chamber's perimeter, computer workstations and scientific equipment formed a ring. Jason approached one cautiously, his glasses capturing the displays. The screen showed diagrams, measurements, and scrolling data, all monitoring the floating entity. "This is it, Maya," Jason said, his voice filled with vindication. "This is what my father was talking about, non-terrestrial intelligence. It's not just a ship or technology they're hiding here. It's a living being or something that appears to be living," Maya cautioned. "Be careful, Jason." Jason circled the chamber, documenting everything. The walls were covered with the same strange symbols he'd seen in the corridor, but here they were, arranged in patterns almost like astronomical charts. "These look like star maps," he murmured, focusing his glasses on them, "but not of our solar system." The humming sound grew louder as he moved closer to the suspended entity. The temperature dropped further, frost beginning to form on nearby surfaces. 2,000 viewers now, Maya reported, and I'm seeing messages coming in. People are asking if this is real or some elaborate hoax. "It's real," Jason assured her, reaching out toward the entity. "I can feel the cold radiating from it. There's a kind of static electricity in the air." Just as his hand came within inches of the membrane, a voice spoke, not from the entity, but from behind him. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Jason spun around to find a man in a white lab coat standing at the chamber entrance. Unlike the scientist Jason had imagined working at such a facility, this man appeared ordinary, middle-aged, slightly balding, with round glasses and a calm demeanor. "You don't have clearance to be here," the man said, making no move to sound an alarm or call security. "What is this thing?" Jason demanded, gesturing toward the floating entity. "That's classified," the scientist replied, then tilted his head slightly. "You already knew that, didn't you, Mr. Reeve?" Jason felt his blood run cold. "You know who I am. We know about your channel, your theories." The scientist stepped further into the room. "We've been watching your progress for some time." Jason asked, backing away slightly. "The project team," the man clarified, "though I suspect you're more interested in what that is than who we are." The entity pulsed brighter, its appendages moving more rapidly, as if agitated by the conversation. "Is it alive?" Jason asked, his journalist instincts taking over despite his fear. "In a manner of speaking," the scientist answered. "Though not in any way we traditionally define life, it exists simultaneously in multiple states and possibly multiple dimensions. And you're studying it. We're communicating with it," the scientist corrected, "or trying to. It's been challenging." Jason's mind raced. This was beyond anything he'd imagined finding. Not just proof of alien life, but active research, communication. "How long has it been here?" "Since in 47, the scientist said matter-of-factly. "Though not in this form, it's been evolving." A sudden alarm blared through the facility, red lights flashing in the corridor outside. "That would be security noticing your absence," the scientist said, sighing. "I had hoped for more time." "Time for what?" Jason asked, backing toward another exit on the far side of the chamber. "To explain." The scientist said, "There are things you should know before you share this with the world." He gestured toward Jason's glasses. "Yes, I know you're streaming. That's why I approached you instead of simply having security arrest you." "Why tell me anything?" Jason asked, confusion mixing with suspicion. "Because it wants me to," the scientist replied, pointing to the entity. It's been waiting for someone like you. Before Jason could respond, the entity pulsed brilliantly, the light almost blinding. In his ear, Maya cried out, "Jason, the feed is glitching." The suspended object began to rotate rapidly, its membrane becoming transparent, revealing intricate structures within organic technology beyond human understanding. "What's happening?" Jason demanded. "Contact," the scientist said, his voice filled with wonder. "It's never done this before." The entity emitted a piercing tone that made Jason clutch at his ears. Then, impossibly, he heard a voice in his head, not in English or any human language, but somehow perfectly comprehensible. "You have found us at last. May, are you getting this?" Jason gasped, his voice barely audible over the high-pitched tone resonating through the chamber. "The audio is distorted," Maya replied, panic evident in her voice. "Viewer count is exploding over 20,000 now, but the feed keeps glitching." The entity pulsed with increasing intensity, its light casting strange shadows across the room. The scientist stood transfixed, making no move to interfere. "We have waited," the voice continued in Jason's mind. "Through cycles of your star, waiting for one who would see." "See what more?" Jason asked aloud, unsure if he needed to speak for the entity to understand him. "The truth between worlds." The scientist had moved to a console and was frantically typing, his eyes wide with excitement. "It's never communicated this clearly before," he said half to himself. "Not in 75 years of study." Security alarms continued to blare outside, but strangely no guards had appeared yet. Jason glanced nervously at the doors, then back at the entity. "What are you?" he asked. The entity's appendages extended, creating a complex geometric pattern in the air. The temperature in the room plummeted further, frost forming on Jason's eyebrows and lashes. "We are observers, collectors of knowledge, travelers between possibilities." "Aliens," Jason breathed. "No," the voice corrected. "Not foreign, not extraterrestrial. But we have always been here in the spaces between what you perceive as reality." The scientist laughed softly. "That's what we've been trying to tell the higher-ups for decades. They're not from another planet. They're from another dimension that intersects with ours." The entity pulsed in what Jason somehow knew was agreement. "Your kind sees 3 dimensions. Sometimes glimpses a 4th. We exist in many more." "And you've been here since 1947, Jason asked. "A part of us manifested then," the voice explained. "When your weapon tore holes in the fabric between states of being nuclear testing," the scientist clarified. "The Trinity test and subsequent detonations created quantum disturbances we still don't fully understand." Jason's mind reeled with the implications. "So Roswell, not a spacecraft crash," the scientist said, "but a dimensional incursion point. This entity, or a part of it, phased into our reality." "Maya," Jason whispered. "Are you hearing this?" "Partially," she replied. "The signal's weakening." "But Jason, something else is happening. There's chatter on emergency channels, military movements." Jason looked at the scientist. "Why now? Why communicate with me after all this time?" The man shook his head. "I don't know." "Has never shown interest in our communications before. It observes. It allows us to run tests, but direct interaction never. Because you are the messenger," the voice told Jason. "The one who will share truth through my channel." Jason realized, "My followers' awareness must spread, the barriers thin." The entity's light suddenly intensified, forming distinct patterns that Jason somehow recognized as mathematical equations, complex formulas describing multidimensional space. "It's showing me something," Jason whispered, struggling to comprehend the information flooding his mind. "Coordinates, no prediction models." The scientist moved closer, his face illuminated by the pulsing light. "What does it mean?" he asked, and Jason wasn't sure if the question was directed at him or the entity. "Your weapons tear reality again," the voice explained, "not with physical force, but with observation. The Watchers change what is watched. Quantum observation principles," the scientist murmured. But on a macro scale, the sky darkens, the entity continued. "They come through the tears." "Who?" Jason demanded. "Who comes through?" Instead of answering directly, the entity projected images into Jason's mind. Shadows moving between stars, vast intelligences that dwarfed human understanding, entities that existed in spectrums beyond light and darkness. "Others," Jason gasped, "other beings from beyond our dimension. The others do not observe. They consume." The scientists had gone pale. "It's trying to warn us," he whispered. "Warning about what?" Jason asked, his voice trembling. Before the entity could respond, a new alarm sounded deeper, more urgent than the security alerts. Red emergency lights began flashing in patterns Jason hadn't seen before. The scientist looked up, his face contorted with panic. "They're initiating containment protocols," he said. "Full facility lockdown." "Because of me?" Jason asked. "No." The scientist's voice was grim. "Because of that," he pointed to the entity, which had begun to change. Its membrane was rippling, the light within flickering between its usual blue-purple hues and a deep, unsettling crimson. Too late. The voice in Jason's mind had changed, becoming distorted, fragmented. Tear already opening. "They sense me. They come." "Jason." Ma's voice crackled through the earpiece. "Something's interfering with all signals in the area. The stream is breaking up." The entity convulsed, its appendages whipping violently through the air. One of them passed through a nearby console, which sparked and went dark. "Its phase shifting," scientist explained, backing away, losing cohesion in our dimension. The chamber doors suddenly slid open and armed personnel rushed in. Not regular military, but figures in specialized containment suits with unfamiliar insignia. On the ground now, one of them shouted. Jason raised his hands, but remained standing. "People need to know what's happening here," he said, gesturing toward his glasses. "Thousands are watching." "Not anymore," the leader replied. "All signals from this facility have been blocked." Jason glanced at the scientist, who nodded grimly, confirming the claim. "It doesn't matter," Jason insisted. "The stream was distributed through multiple relays. You can't erase what people have already seen." The entity emitted a high-pitched whine that made the armed personnel cease. The lights in the chamber flickered, and for a moment, reality itself seemed to waver like heat shimmer on the desert pavement. "Tell them," the voice commanded, in Jason's mind weaker now. "The sky has changed. The stars move. They come." "Sir," one of the armed figures addressed the scientist. "Project Overthrow has been authorized. We need to move you to a safe location." The scientist's face drained of color. "That protocol hasn't been activated since 1979. What's Project Overthrow?" Jason demanded. "Dimensional reset," the scientist replied quietly. "They were going to try to sever the connection. And what happens to the entity?" The scientist looked at the floating form, which was becoming increasingly unstable. "It gets pushed back to its own dimensional plane along with anything else that doesn't belong in ours." The implication was clear and terrifying. "Maya," Jason whispered, though he wasn't sure if she could still hear him. "If you're getting this, download everything. Back it up. Share it everywhere." The armed personnel surrounded Jason, weapons trained on him. "Jason Reeve," the leader said formally, "you're hereby detained under National Security Directive 133. Surrender all recording devices immediately." As they moved to apprehend him, the entity let out a final piercing cry, both audible and psychic, that dropped everyone in the room to their knees. Remember, the voice echoed in Jason's mind as his vision began to blur. The sky used to be bluer. The last thing Jason saw before losing consciousness was the entity collapsing in on itself, forming a swirling vortex of light and shadow that seemed to bend the very fabric of reality around it. And then darkness. 3 days later, Maya Torres sat alone in her apartment, surrounded by computer equipment and empty coffee cups. Dark circles underscored her eyes, testament to sleepless nights spent searching, analyzing, uploading. The live stream had cut out exactly 73 minutes after Jason entered the restricted area. The final images, the entity collapsing, the armed personnel moving in, Jason falling, had been seen by over 50,000 viewers before the feed died. Then came the denials. Official statements described the footage as an elaborate hoax. Social media platforms flagged and restricted the clips. Major news networks refused to cover the story. Within hours, the original stream had been scrubbed from most platforms, though copies continued to appear and disappear across the internet in a digital game of whack-a-mole. Mir had spent the first 24 hours trying to contact Jason, calling his phone, messaging his accounts, even reaching out to Desert Valley Logistics. All she received were automated responses or redirections. It was as if Jason Reeve had never existed. She stared at her main monitor, where frame-by-frame analysis of the final moments played on loop. The entity's collapse, the strange distortion of space around it, details that no special effects team could have fabricated on the fly. Her phone buzzed with a notification. Another takedown notice for a mirror of the stream she'd uploaded to an obscure video platform. They can't erase it all, she murmured to herself. A mantra she'd repeated countless times since Jason disappeared. Too many people saw a knock at her door startled her. She wasn't expecting anyone, and few people knew where she lived. Cautiously, she approached the door and peered through the peephole. A delivery person stood outside holding a small package. Delivery for tours, the person called through the door. Maya hesitated, then opened the door halfway, security chain still engaged. I didn't order anything. The delivery person shrugged. Just doing my job, ma'am. They held out a small padded envelope and a digital signature pad. Sign here. Maya signed and took the package, closing and locking the door immediately after. The envelope had no return address, just her name printed in block letters. With trembling fingers, she opened it. Inside was the single USB drive, black, unmarked, ordinary. She stared at it for a long moment, then carried it to her isolation computer, a machine not connected to the internet, used specifically for examining suspicious files. She inserted the drive and waited as the system scanned it for malware. Finding none, she opened the sole file on the drive, an audio recording labeled simply final. Jason's voice filled the room, distorted and distant, as if speaking through layers of interference. Maya, if you're hearing this, the dead man's switch worked. I don't know what happened after they took me. I don't know if I'm still here, but I need you to understand what I learned. Maya's eyes filled with tears as she listened to Jason describe what the entity had shown him in those final moments. Glimpses of other dimensions, warnings about tears in reality, beings that existed beyond human comprehension. The entity wasn't just communicating with me, Jason's voice continued. It was using me, using us to spread awareness. It needed people to know because something is coming, Maya. Something that's been trying to break through for decades. The recording crackled with static. They'll try to discredit the footage. They'll say it was all fake, but thousands saw it live. The truth is out there now, fragmented but spreading. And that's what the entity wanted. Not just one person knowing everything, but millions knowing pieces. Collective awareness. Mia wiped her eyes, listening intently as Jason's voice grew fainter. I don't think I'm coming back from this, Maya, but I need you to keep fighting. Keep sharing what we found and watch the skis. It showed me that the color is changing. Subtle shifts most people won't notice. The sky used to be bluer. The recording ended with a burst of static, then silence. Mia sat motionless for several minutes, processing what she'd heard. Then, with newfound determination, she moved to her main computer and began typing, creating new accounts, finding new platforms, preparing to spread Jason's final message. As she worked, her phone buzzed with messages from followers, friends, fellow researchers, all asking the same questions. Was it real? Where was Jason? What had they discovered? The answers weren't simple, but the mission was clear. The truth needed to spread piece by piece, person by person. Outside her window, Maya paused to look at the evening sky. Had the blue always been this shade? Was it changing as Jason claimed? She couldn't be certain, but she was sure of one thing. Jason Reeves' last stream had started something that couldn't be contained. The questions he'd raised couldn't be unasked. The glimpse he had provided of entities beyond human understanding, of dimensional barriers thinning, had planted seeds of awareness in thousands of minds. Her computer pinged with notifications as new copies of the stream appeared online, shared by strangers who refused to